Hey everyone, thank you for making the time to come out today and join us for the Amazon Web Services and Cloudability joint webinar on advanced strategies for AWS cost allocation with tags and linked accounts. My name is Kyle Lichtenberg. I'm a solutions architect with Amazon Web Services in the partner program, and I'm here today with J.R. Stormans, the co-founder of Cloudability, and we're going to be talking a little bit about how to manage the cost allocation associated with your Amazon resources. Before we get too far into this presentation, I wanted to go through a few housekeeping pieces. On the screen itself, you should see a tool called the Q&A tool where you can enter in questions. We're going to collect those questions throughout the presentation, so feel free to enter those in at any time. And at the end, we're going to have a few minutes where we'll pick out the questions and we'll read them out and get those answered for you. Also, the presentation today will be made available on SlideShare after this presentation is completed, and a recording of this will be available on YouTube at the AWS webinar channel. So today we're going to cover a brief overview of tagging and linked accounts from the AWS side, and then we're going to take a look at strategies for using tags and linked accounts for cost allocation, creating a successful tagging strategy, and reporting and sharing your costs with the right decision makers in your organization. After that, we're going to have a Q&A. And actually, a few times throughout this presentation, we're going to have a brief polls. It's 1 or 2 questions. They just take a few seconds, and we would greatly appreciate it if you would take the time to give us your feedback and give us some responses on those polls as we move along. So a few of the key benefits of AWS, most notably in this respect is the lower total cost of IT. Amazon is great at high volume, low margin businesses. It's part of our DNA. As we grow and become more efficient, we've lowered prices for our customers 41 times since 2006. Driving cost efficiencies, it's one of the things that we focus on. It's one of the things that we know is important to our customers, and it's one of the things that we know that we need to continue to improve on and continue to hand off. We also give you the agility to start infrastructure in seconds. You can experiment very quickly at very low cost compared to traditional methodologies, and our customers tell us that they want this flexibility. They want to be able to build applications the way they want to. They don't want to be locked into particular programming models or particular languages or particular architectures. You want the ability to try different things and find methodologies and find architectures that work the best for them and for their business. Throughout that entire process, we know that it's important for you to only pay for what you use. It's silly for us to charge you for things that you're not using, and we want to make sure you're getting as much value as possible out of the platform. So with all this agility and with this low cost, there is still cost. How do you manage those resources? What type of tools do we have in place to help you allocate these things back? Tagging is one of the key functions that we have in place. There's user-definable key value tags for your EC2 resources that you can define, whether it's identifying this department is associated with this instance, or this user is associated with this instance, or this project is associated with these instances. The tags can be used as a way to break up the infrastructure, and they're visible on your AWS bill. So when you're looking at it, if you're in a scenario where you charge back to your various departments, you can identify these ones are associated with these people. These departments need to pay X amount, and you can use the data that's available there to make these things happen. We also have a concept called linked accounts, where you can tie multiple sub-accounts to a single pair. So if you wanted to have actual logical breaks between the infrastructure units, you can still connect these back with software at a logical level. But if you want to have independent silos where people could function, whether it's by department again, or if it's by project, or if it's by environment, dev, test, prod, those types of scenarios. You can break these up in any way that you like by using the linked account systems. And these linked accounts can also share our reserved instances, which is also a big key to reducing the overall cost on AWS and keeping things efficient from a cost standpoint. But different organizations have different structures. Some separate them by business units, some by projects, some do both. If your org charges back for IT expenses, understanding these options and leveraging them effectively is essential to your company for cost allocation. Our partner, Cloudability, can help you develop and manage strategies around these solutions. And here to tell you a little bit more about their platform and how they can make your life easier in this respect is our friend with Cloudability, J.R. Stormans, co-founder, and he's going to take it away.
Thank you, Kyle. I'm just pulling up my screen here. We'll get started. So yeah, as Kyle mentioned, we are going to go through a few of the ways that we can help you set up your Cloudability infrastructure as well as within Amazon to better split out your costs. 1 second here while I get the screen going. Excellent. So we are going to, apologies everyone. All right, here we go. So we're going to cover three basic things. We're going to talk about tags and linked accounts and a little bit of what Kyle just covered to make sure we can go into a little more detail on that. We're going to talk about how to develop your plan for cost allocation, and then also go into a demo of how to build out some of these cost reports. So before I get started, let me do a quick introduction of what Cloudability is. So we are cloud infrastructure analytics for scaled web businesses and enterprises. We work with a lot of different companies. A few of our customers include Adobe, Intuit, SAS, Pega, Neustar, and we actually track about $750 million of cloud spending for these companies and across about 10,000 different users. So a lot of the techniques that we're going to talk about in this webinar are based upon the best practices that we've seen these companies implement at various scale. So the Cloudability platform has about 5 different parts to it. The first is a spend management component that helps give visibility into trends in your cost. The next is cost analytics that really lets you dive into detailed cost reporting broken by things like tag, linked accounts, etc. Third is an EC2 usage analytics component, which is really all about helping you understand where there might be waste and providing instance-level detail. Fourth, we offer reserved instance analytics that help you understand when and where you can save money with reserved instances. And finally, we have an enterprise enablement component that really helps give organizational views into your data, so you can do things like group accounts together and give lots of different people in the organization access to the data. The last thing I'll say about Cloudability in general is that we are a SaaS solution, so there's no software to set up or much to get configured to get it running. So let's jump into a quick question for the group here. We're going to do a poll, and I'm curious what the primary drivers for doing cost allocation within your organization is. So we see a lot of different people use cost allocation in different ways. One of those is just simply to provide visibility for finance. We also have a lot of people who want each department to watch their spending and to kind of keep them honest so they can know what's happening within their infrastructure. Another common use case that Kyle mentioned is charging back costs internally, particularly in an environment where you've got shared resources within Amazon. That's something that you want to make sure you can do so that you know which department is spending which money. We also see people looking to do either a combination of all of these or some other sources as well. So curious to hear what in particular the group on the line is using cost allocation for. All right, great. So looks like we've got our answers back in. Give it one more second here. And it looks like the majority of folks are using cost allocation for all the above. They want to give finance visibility as well as do chargeback. And that's pretty indicative of what we see commonly with the companies we work with. So let's lay out a quick baseline for the way that we generally see these large companies, like the ones we mentioned that are our customers, Adobe and Intuit and whatnot, some of the scenarios that they face when they're running within Amazon. So a common scenario that we see is a situation where companies will have a few major business units running on AWS. And within those business units, there's often dozens of products or cost centers running different resources. Within those products and cost centers, we often see a combination of things that are dedicated to a cost center and also shared between multiples. And we might have a shared service like an analytics service that you're running or a logging service. And these are things that more than one part of the business are using. And finally, there's often a very distributed team using Amazon. As Kyle was mentioning, this gives a lot of flexibility in the way that Amazon lets you spin up resources, fail faster, try different things, and experiment. But it also can create a lot of complexity when you've got lots of different people in the organization using Amazon in a lot of different ways. So aside from that, we also see that different people in the company really want to see those AWS resources split out in different ways. They have different reporting needs. As we were looking at that poll question, some want to do chargeback, some just want to give visibility, others are helping to keep each team in check. And so let's talk a little bit about some of those different use cases and the problems that people run into. So the first group is really finance. And finance tends to view the world in terms of business units and profit centers. They are looking to figure out how they can do intra-month cost accruals for their POs. They're looking at wanting to get monthly breakdowns or month-to-date breakdowns of costs by products, by shared resources, by environments. And also to do that, sort of, I think, the holy grail of a lot of the cost allocation, which is how do we charge back the costs throughout the organization so that everybody is paying their fair share for the resources that they're using. The next group is the operations team. And the operations team tends to look at the Amazon world in terms of the team budgets as well as different technology environments that each team are using. So they're looking for things like breakdowns by team and project of spending against budget. They're looking to get alerted when those teams or projects could be more efficient. They're also looking for ways they can do cross-company and cross-consolidated billing account reserved instance recommendations to lower their Amazon costs on an hourly basis across these teams and projects. The third group is engineering. And this is a group that actually I think doesn't get enough attention paid to it in the cost allocation realm because there's actually a lot of benefits to engineering to having a clear view of how costs break down. They tend to look at the world in terms of individual resources that can be managed and optimized. And one of the things that's really valuable for engineering department to see is a daily breakdown of costs as things change by project, by revision, by environment. It's also helpful for them to see their own spending broken down so they can find inefficiencies and figure out where they can tune up the system to be more efficient and to get more bang for their buck. And the third thing really that we see engineering really get a benefit out of solid cost allocation strategy is they're looking to automate the reporting of costs up to other departments so that instead of them having to get requests from finance, getting requests from operations, et cetera, that those costs can automatically be sent up via some of the tools that Amazon makes available. Great, so let's talk a little bit about how we get all those three groups the tools that they need in order to do the cost allocation. So the first and most common tool that Kyle touched on are tags. And Amazon tags are by far the most common, but they're also the most flexible way that you can split out your bill. So tags consist of a key value pair. Pretty straightforward, really easy to apply, and very flexible in the way you can use them. You can apply about 10 different tags to each Amazon resource. And so you want to be applying these to things like EC2 instances, to S3 buckets, to RDS instances. Anything that is taggable, you should definitely be working to tag. The third thing about tags to keep in mind is that tags and both the keys and the values are case sensitive. So this is really important to be consistent when applying those so that reporting does not end up incorrect when you try to report upon it. So here's a quick example of how you might see some tags applied to some EC2 resources. So in the first one here, you see that it has a key of environment and a value of production, along with a key of tier and a value of front end. The last one, at the bottom of the list here, it shows a key of environment with value of development, and it has a tier of backend. So again, you can apply multiple tags in different ways to break these things out as needed. So the second tool that is really useful are linked accounts. Now, linked accounts are generally part of a consolidated billing structure at Amazon, and they're actually often very much underused because people tend to try and rely just on tags to do this, but linked accounts are really the cleanest way to get the best division between spending. And part of that is because you can't tag everything, and so we recommend using linked accounts to split up things that really matter so you have the cleanest division between lines. So in this example, and this is a common way that we see very large enterprises do this splitting, they'll have a business unit that falls under a master payer account that may be the top of a consolidated billing structure. Underneath that, they'll have a series of linked accounts, and they may put each actual individual product, product A, product B in this example, into their own linked account, and then also each individual environment. So you might have a linked account for product A environment 1 and a separate linked account for product A environment 2. This gives you the clearest way to break things out. And then below that, there's generally a tagging structure that goes into much more detail, so they can cover things like service, role, node, cluster, etc. So when should you use tags versus linked accounts? Well, tags do offer the most flexibility, but it's actually really difficult to get 100% coverage with tags because you need everybody to tag when they launch their resources, and not everything can be tagged. So on the flip side, linked accounts don't require any work because everything that's in an account is charged to that account, but they do limit the reporting options a bit because you can really only report along that one dimension that you've split the accounts by. So we recommend, if at all possible, using a hybrid strategy where you are using linked accounts very liberally for the most important divisions of spending and then tagging everything else below that. So let's talk a little bit about some tips and tricks for when you want to roll out your cost allocation plan. The first thing really, and it's so easy to skip over this, is to get everyone involved at an early stage. You really do want to sit down not just with ops, not just with engineering, not just with finance, but with all three to make sure that everyone's cost allocation needs are covered and that we're making sure that we're splitting the spending along the right lines. So as you go to implement your plan, here's three things to keep in mind. The first is focus on 3 to 5 required dimensions. And what I mean by this is once you've sat down with everybody from finance and ops and engineering, figure out what are the most important dimensions or tag keys that you really want to have applied to everything. So these might be business unit, they might be product, they might be environment, they might be role, a lot of different options here, but make sure that you all agree upon the core set of quote-unquote required tags. The next thing is be sure to tag systematically using a consistent nomenclature. So you want to make sure that essentially you're not putting garbage in and therefore getting garbage out when you go to reports. And finally, aim to answer questions with your tags and linked accounts. So a few questions you might want to run through. What cost centers are affecting the bottom line? What business units does the spending fall under? How much does it cost for each of my products? How does version changes affect my cost of my architecture? And are we leaving things on in different environments that we might want to consider turning off? You'll also want to watch out for inconsistency when you do your tagging. Cloudability has monitored, I think, well over 1 million different instances now, and we've seen a lot of different ways that people can spell things like environments. So you want to make sure to be very consistent, and if possible, tag programmatically to ensure that consistency. If you do end up with some inconsistency, though, we do offer some tag mapping tools that will let you combine multiple keys that should go together into a single dimension. So you also want to make sure that you tag everything you can. Not just EC2 can be tagged. You can tag RDS, you can tag S3, you can tag Glacier, you can tag a lot of different areas. So make sure you're applying those tags everywhere you can to get the most coverage. And the last big thing that I want to cover is the name tag. The name tag really is your best friend. We get a lot of requests from companies that want to roll up multiple Amazon resources into a single line item in a cost report. And the name tag really is the way to do that. If you give the same name tag to different resources, you can report on those together in one line. So a few examples with that. You might tag S3 buckets with the name so you can track the storage related to them and some of the bandwidth. You also can apply the same name tag to EBS that you've applied to the associated EC2 instance to get a total cost for that name, not just compute. A third one that we see people miss a lot is also RDS, which is an increasingly large part of many customers' bills. So make sure to cover all those bases as you're going through it. And one final pro tip around the name tag, you can actually consider a strategy that concatenates the name tag to combine multiple attributes into a single tag, which gives you more flexibility as well. So a quick run through on these takeaways before we dive into a demo of how to actually build the reports. You do want to make sure, keep your consistent nomenclature across the board and make sure you're answering specific questions in the process. Be sure to tag everything you can, and don't be afraid to use linked accounts liberally. It's great, really easy to set them up, and they keep clean lines between spending. You do want to enforce tagging via technology like CloudFormation, PUP, or Chef-it to ensure consistency. Use the name tag for everything you can, and consider concatenating it even at times. And also consider sharing the reports with more than just finance. A lot of people in the organization can use this information to their advantage. So great, now that we've gone through some of the strategies, let's dive quickly into a quick demo of how to build out some of these cost reports within Cloudability. All right, so I'm looking at the opening page of Cloudability, the dashboard. When you first come in here, you're going to see some high-level numbers about your month-to-date spend. You're going to see an estimate of where you're projected to end up at the end of the month, comparisons to last month, some numbers upon your rolling average spending so far, yesterday's spend, etc. This part of the site I'm going to go through a little bit quickly and go straight into the cost analytics portion of Cloudability. So the cost analytics enable you to basically take all of the reporting that Amazon has done on the back of all this work you've done with cost allocation with tags and linked accounts and build out the reports you need on top of that. So the first page within the cost analytics is going to be a report by account. And we are looking at the last 7 days of spending. You could change that to a different time period if you want. And essentially what we're going to see straight away are the accounts that we've broken down our spending by. So in this example, we've got 4 linked accounts. These are generally part of a consolidated billing structure, and breakdowns of the spending within each of those. So one of the things you might want to do within Cloudability once you get in here, let's assume in this example you are using primarily a linked account strategy, is customize this report. All these reports are totally customizable. If you want, you can add additional dimensions or metrics. So in this example, let's scroll through all these different options that we've got by tags, by time frame, by usage, and let's add in one called the product name. So what this is going to show us is essentially not just our linked account breakdowns, but how much each linked account is spending on each Amazon product or service. You might go a bit deeper in this and actually filter in. So let's say we just want to look at our Amazon production spending. So I can go ahead and click to drill in on AWS production. That will create a filter here that's just drilling to AWS production. We can get even more detailed now to customize this report and potentially add something like another tag to this. Or we could add Amazon usage types, which are going to show us very detailed information about what type of spending within each service the dollars are going to within that. So lots of different ways you can slice this. The reports are very customizable in that sense. Once you've got just the right report, you can then save that report. We'll call this our account by service and usage type. And these reports then become shareable within your organization to other users. By default, this is shared to others who have Cloudability accounts. You can also give them a short URL to get quickly to this report. So let's look at a scenario where we might actually be building a report that's more tag-based than anything. So I'm going to click this Add Report button right here, which is going to take us to a blank report. So in this example, let's try to put together a report by the tag environment, and also figure out maybe how many hours of each service are being spent and what days they're being spent on. So I'm going to start with adding a dimension, and I'm going to scroll down to our tags here. We've got a lot of different tags that we're using within our infrastructure. I'm going to start with the environment tag. I'm also going to add in a metric for the total invoice cost that we'll be pulling from Amazon, and I'll hit Apply here. And so this is going to give us a very high-level report initially of here's our spending broken down by environment. So in this demo account, it looks like there's actually a fair amount of the spending that has not been applied with an environment tag. So in a minute here, I'll show you how to figure out what some of that is. But first, let's customize this report a little bit further. So let's say we also, within here, want to find out how many hours of actual, say, EC2 are being applied with each of these. So we could add a dimension for hours, and we can also add a dimension for something to give us a little better idea of the time frame. So let's look at the date dimension. So this report is actually going to be pretty detailed. We're going to be looking at basically for each environment, production, staging, etc., over each day, how much did we spend for that day in that environment, as well as how many hours in this view for EC2 were actually billed. Now again, you could take this much deeper or higher level if you want. So for example, we just want to look at production, we could zoom in on that. Let's say we want to look not just at the day, but we also want to look at all the Amazon product names underneath that, or the services. We could add that as well, and literally get day by day, environment by environment, what the spending was for each of these services. You can also mix and match the linked accounts and tags within this. So we're looking right now at a environment tag and date. We might want to look by environment and also a linked account. So if I customize this report, remove this product name we were looking at, and change the date, include the linked account name, we're going to get a view that shows us, well, it looks like all the spending in this account is actually in the AWS production linked account, but if there were spending in multiples, we would have all the accounts listed out here as well. So it makes it really easy to mix and match all those different both tagged and linked accounts that you set up during the process of doing your cost allocation. So let's jump over briefly to the usage portion of the app. I'm going to show you how we can set up a view of untagged resources within Cloudability. So in this example, I'm going to add a new report, and we're going to pull a environment tag again, and go ahead and I'm going to put in a estimated cost metric here, apply that, and what we're going to get here is a breakdown again by these things. Except now I'm actually going to focus in on this not set spending. within this. And I'm going to customize this report to add some more information about what that spending is. So I'm going to add in the instance ID and also the instance name. And what this is going to give us is a pretty clear breakdown of which resources we need to go out and tag. So again, it makes it really easy to help you do that cleanup of, okay, we've gone through our cost allocation process. How do we make sure we're getting all bases covered? So the last thing I want to show before we open up to the Q&A and we can dive in a bit further is that we also offer an option to group together linked accounts. So you can actually come in here and view all your different linked accounts from Amazon that you've added and put these into ad hoc groupings. So right now we're looking at a group by business unit, environment, product, etc. You can take that and essentially say, this account falls under our enterprise unit and is production. This account falls under our pro unit and is dev. This one is pro and staging. And once you've grouped those together, you can actually build views on top of that to essentially give customers different combinations of spending. So I want to see just the customer spending, or I want to see it just in customers and production. You can create these views, and once you've got them in place, you can actually assign these views to individual users. So this Colby gentleman can just get a view of the enterprise accounts, or he can just get a view of the production accounts. So it makes it really easy for each person within the organization to just see the spending that's relevant to them. Well, great. So I know we just covered a lot of pieces really fast, so I want to open up to questions here before we run out of time. So I'm going to switch back to Kyle, and please share your questions with us as they come in via the questions box on the left.
All right, thank you so much, Chair. Well, actually, before we jump into questions, we're going to throw up a quick poll here just to get your feedback as we move along in the presentation here. And if you could just take a second to respond as the poll jumps up on your screen. Just another minute here for, all right. So we've had a couple of questions come in here. The first one is actually Amazon specific. Regarding reserved instances, if my search for an RI is not available in the specific region or zone that I'm using with linked accounts, can I share the RIs across linked accounts and across zones? So the RIs are still going to be tied to the specific zone and the specific instance type that is relevant to that reserved instance. So you would not be able to share those cross-region by linking the accounts. Next up, we've got a question here for the Cloudability team. So can you explain how to track and manage costs in relation to pre-established budgets set up at, say, project, product, or organization levels?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the first thing is obviously to get things broken down by tag or linked account that you want to split accordingly. And then, using Cloudability, excuse me, it's pretty easy then to build a report that focuses specifically on the month-to-date spending or whatever period-to-date you want for that tag or for that group of linked accounts. And then you can, either use that report, come back to that. You can set a budget alert for those accounts, or you can set up a daily mail that would basically give you a breakdown of spending. And set those daily mails then to go to the people managing those resources as well. So multiple different ways you can tackle that.
Okay, great. Another Cloudability question. Is there a way to effectively do mass tagging or any tools that can make tagging easier?
Yeah, and we see people who have the most success do some mass tagging with basically programmatically setting up deployments of their infrastructure using something like CloudFormation or Puppet or Chef. Generally, as much as possible, if you can use the Amazon API or one of those services on the back of whatever you're using to do your orchestration, you're going to get the best results because tagging one-off leaves a lot of room. Sure.
Okay, great. Another question came in. Is tagging retroactive?
So tagging is not retroactive, either on the Amazon side or the Cloudability side, and a part of that, and Kyle can speak to the Amazon reasons, but for us it's about providing an audit. if you have one resource that was running for 1 week and you change its tag to be something else, you want to be able to report retroactively on what it was being used for previously. So the tags are applied basically from the day you set them.
Right, and it's going to be the same reasoning from the Amazon side as well. So one last question here before we wrap things up. What kind of access does Cloudability need to my AWS account?
Yeah, it's actually pretty straightforward. We basically set up an IAM credential that has only billing and usage data access. So it basically just collects the CSV files and the CloudWatch metrics from Amazon, and then we ingest that on an hourly basis and build reports on the back of that.
That's great. So I'd like to thank you very much, JR, for coming out and talking to us about Cloudability and how it can help enhance the tagging and account linking systems that AWS offers here and how it can make our customers' lives a little bit easier. And I'd like to especially thank all of our customers that have come out today to spend some time learning about Cloudability's solution and how they can enhance their lives with AWS. So thank you very much for making the time, and we hope you very much enjoy the rest of your day.